Hello and welcome back to Versus. We are going to be watching Kieran playing Jeskai Control and Ember playing Rakdos Aggro. Kieran Kieran has returned after a little bit of time off, but we also have somebody else returning who's had very little time off, and it's James. Hello.
Hey mate, you good?
Yes, yeah, doing very well, thanks. Which deck do you want to talk us through?
Why don't I go through Jeskai because you've played a mono black with red in it, so it's just red
Okay,
black seems fine for you.
all right.
And obviously, the main point of Kieran's deck is obviously this terrible eight-pointed card, Ancestral Recall, that Henry is obviously convinced everyone is really bad and shouldn't be played in any deck. So that's the main focus of what he's trying to do with the good old-fashioned Jeskai control. Controlling, attacking, killing, countering, drawing lots of cards, getting lots of value, just trying to make sure that Ember doesn't do anything fun. And points are 8 on recall, like I said, and 1 each from Mystical Tutor and 4 Theolingus.
Very nice. And Ember's doing the things that more akin to what I like doing, as you put it. Let's start attacking with some more aggressively slanted creatures. Points. Ember is currently on 9 points. The Mox Jet, Mox Ruby, Strip Mine, Reanimate, Ancient Tomb, and has ignored that tenth point. But it definitely goes more into like a the mid range than aggro with some of the stuff that Ember will be doing here. But the plan is Ember goes fast and tries to get Kieran dead, and Kieran makes sure that doesn't happen and goes into the long game and outvalues Ember in a big way.
And starts off with a lot of value, the most pointed card in the format. But it's bad. Henry's told us all so many times, we know. It's fine.
Yeah, well, when you don't have to go and find it, and you just cast it straight up,
It just
pretty
turn
good.
on recall. Yeah.
Also, there's got to be some level of fear that this recall was in response to the Mox. Here we go.
Well timed recall just to see if there's counter spell that could get rid of this, because this is that's kind of a wasteland at this stage, right? Countering that Chrome Mox. And Kieran not too bothered about the card disadvantage because he's just drawn 3 of them. So pretty solid.
I mean, if a Lotus Petal had come down at the same time and a 3-drop, that could have been
Exactly.
pretty darn strong.
And this Stifle is pretty darn strong. Ember went from expecting to have 4 mana
Wow.
on turn to not having a lot of mana at all. That's max punishment for not fetching while Kieran was tapped out.
I don't know if you caught that, but Ember just said, "I hope you get a parking ticket." And Kieran responded with, "I don't drive." So Ember wanted to know how Kieran got to the event on Sunday. And when Kieran said that he walked, Ember responded by saying, "Well, I hope you stub your toe on a lamppost then."
But we've got lots of minor level inconveniences as punishment for this
Yeah.
pretty controlling start. Let's describe it in a pleasant way.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty brutal.
Yeah, Kieran's basically had 2 strip mines of his own. They was just attached to spells, which is pretty solid. And it is a minor thing. Like, so often you can see blue players dancing around each other with when to crack the fetch first, who needs to break until you have to hope to avoid the stifle. So it is good to try and do that where possible. But
is it legal to
it's
upload a hate crime on YouTube like this?
a little excessive, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure this constitutes a hate crime. It's not it's not very kind, but it's part of the game.
I mean, it's a crime based on Magic's definitions, I suppose. So
Yeah, fair.
can't argue that.
Although the recall
If-
wasn't.
No, the recall was not a crime.
Yeah,
No,
could
it was
have been.
No, but
Do I dare ask, were any of those cards that you fucking rinsed me with the answers?
And now the level of salt that Ember's feeling is now wanting to know whether he looked into that force, or had it in hand at all times. Kieran had it, just wanted other blue options of things to pitch.
Yeah, invert polarity is a 3 mana counter spell is it's obviously still playable, still a good card, but that's one of the rougher ones when you're trying to keep up with an aggressive deck. So a good call to find something that might be slightly better to pitch to the force than whatever else he had in hand. I'm not sure what he's got, but that Stifle, for example, or whatever counter spell or card draw or dig through tide or whatever. I suppose he's not playing dig through tide, is he? But those types of cards.
The last 2 times that I've cast Invoke Polarity, I have won the flip. And I stole a Wandering Emperor and a Baragoyf.
Those are pretty good cards.
Those were good cards. Speaking of good cards, here's another 3-drop that man, Kieran's managed to just fill the bin fast. And
yeah, this is a really strong start from
this
Kieran.
is disgusting. This is really disgusting.
And it was an interesting. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, and Ember's practically not been able to do anything. It's like, oh,
no,
you've got an Oculus on board, and I now have the 3 mana that I thought I was going to have on turn 1.
yeah, all of the hate from Kieran has basically enabled him to have this Oculus perfectly on curve.
Yep.
While denying Ember anything. But it was funny, I thought, this weekend when looking through the results. We had a lot of control decks this weekend, and I don't know if it's any bit of a reaction to the increase in combo we had the week before. George finally didn't win one, which was nice. So control starting to do the thing that it's here to do. So more players getting interested in these blue cards, and Apart Oculus goes in pretty much most blue decks. Let's be fair, there's not many that wouldn't want to cast this.
Yeah, I do like the fact that, I mean, it's only 1 week, but it does feel like there's potentially a shift going on. Of everybody kind of going, now I'm fed up with all of these combo decks, just rinsing everybody.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I was one of those people who turned up with a control deck and got rinsed by the other control decks. I got rinsed by land-based control decks, so I just got strip mine locked against 2 different opponents. So that was a thing.
Yes, those decks. The land control deck is a really cool idea. It's less cool when you're being life from the loam strip mined to death, and Ember being a Jarneed and Oculus to death here, which is also not pleasant, but still. But it was a cool idea, so I do hope we get to see those decks on at some point, because we've had a lot of lands decks on before, but they've been a bit more combo-y led or dark depths led or something like that, whereas this very much was, I'm going to win by killing your creatures, getting value, looping strip mines, and just controlling you out of the game with lands-based strategies, which is cool. So just another new angle. There's a lot of ways to play this format. That's why we love it so much. So.
And I think it's a real testament to how strong that game was for Kieran that we're already talking about the next match that we put on camera.
Yeah, that was a rough one for Ember. That was
100%.
It went from, I'm sure she looked at her hand and went, "This is busted. I've got land, Chrome Mox, Lotus Petal. I'm going to get a stupid 3-drop down on turn 1."
Maybe it's a graveyard trespasser, and we had to wait till turn 4 to do instead of turn 1.
Yep.
Oh, here's a good start though.
Yeah, good old classic scam start. So
let's see if we do get the reanimate to follow it up.
We do.
Okay. So
that's a strong start.
Discharge and Swords gone. So we've got Remand and Flage left.
Yep. So quite a lot of pressure on Ember. Well, quite a lot of pressure on Kieran in general, but on Ember to follow up with a good play on turn 2, because Remand into Flage is going to slow down anything later than that. So this is a really strong start from Ember. You have to hope she has a good 2-dot to follow up here, because if she curves out really scarily, then Remand and Flage might not be fast enough.
Yeah, they are fairly slow, I suppose, but we do need to be applying some more pressure now, because Flage can just come down and get rid of the grief, and then potentially Kieran can start recovering.
Yeah, it does look like with Kieran fetching us a land, I have to assume Ember has just missed the land drop and passed, which is a rough one.
Okay.
I mean, you can definitely see the draw of turn 1 grief, scam, grief. That's always good.
Yeah, but against control, that's not. Well, maybe it is good enough. I don't know. It feels like you still can't ride that to a win unless you are drawing those lands.
No, I think everyone would have realised that just a grief won't get it done against a control deck, but should have to be hoping that there's something good in the next couple of cards.
Yeah.
Like there's,
Okay.
so we've got the
Red
land. So
source.
that's good.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I just completely fell
I think
I'll fetch.
that first game was also just a really good example of how stupid recall and control recall decks can be, even early on. Like that game was dead in the water, like
Yeah.
within a couple of turns.
Yeah, very much so. Like recall is, I mean, there's a reason it's 8 points, obviously, and you have to like. I think to play it, you have to maximize it. You want to have. It's really hard to not have mystical tutor as a 9th point when you play recall because if you investing so much in recall, you want to be able to get it. You want the spell seekers, you want the mystic sanctuaries, you want the snapcaster mages. Like you want Dreadhorde Arcanist if you're in red, obviously. You want to be maximizing the value out of that, and when you do, it was in game 1 here, but it's not. The saying is it's not the first recall that kills you; it's the second or the third or the fourth. Although 4 is a lot. I don't think I've ever seen anyone recall before, but still. But we can see this miss land drop on turn 2 really hurting Ember now, because if she'd been able to get the sphere of missing out down under the remand,
yeah, exactly.
it'd been a much better spot.
And also, it would have given opportunity to draw that extra land.
Exactly. Yep.
Be interesting to see what the rest of the hand was and whether I would have been interested in keeping it or not, though. Because even Grief Reanimate, I don't think, for me, still learning how mulliganing works in this format isn't necessarily going to be enough for me to keep.
Yeah, Scam's not always the win or slam it is in Modern because you don't have the consistency of following it up. I could see that Grief Scam Grief into FOMO is a solid curve. If Ember could have got that, and she's hitting her land drops now. If the curve would have been Grief, double Thoughtseize into Fear of Missing Out into Rampaging Froston, that's huge, right?
Yeah.
So that's a really good curve. That Flays would be too slow against, Remand would be too slow against. So I could definitely see kind of the eyes lighting up. I just need a land or two, or a Lotus Petal, or something like that.
We talk about greedy keeps, and sometimes greedy keeps are just good because if you get there, you get there.
Yeah, every time I'm pretty bad at keeping greedy keeps. I want to try and be safe because I feel like the universe should reward me by making this responsible, safe decision. And it doesn't work like that. That's not how random chance and variance goes.
Well, the thing is, and I think this is the reason that mulliganing is even more important in this format, or you should mulligan more in this format than limited, for example. Oh, here I am talking about limited again. But your win rate drops a considerable amount with the first every mulligan in limited, and I don't think it's as much of a drop in this format.
No, and it does depend on matchups. I was chatting about George earlier. I watched George mulligan to 4, and his mulligan to 4 was City of Traitors, Blue Source, Tamiyo, Time Twister. That's a pretty good 4. That's cast the turn 1 Tamiyo, turn 2 Time Twister. So you can go a lot further deeper into the mulligan depending on your deck. Obviously, not all decks can do that as well as a deck full of wheels can.
Yeah.
But you definitely can afford to push it a little bit further, and that is one of the learning points when you start to play these types of formats is how much you can push to try and get what you need. If you're paired against an aggro deck, do you mulligan into interactions and board wipes, or do you just I've got 1 land, I've got 2 lands and a couple of cantrips, I'm sure it'll be fine. What's the middle ground?
Headliner Scarlet was good. I mean, it didn't really matter that none of Kieran's creatures could block, but oh dear.
Is it going to get Ancestral Recall?
It's not getting Ancestral Recall.
No,
you wish this is an Ancestral Recall. This is going to be...
This is Mystical Indeterminate, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Because these 2 creatures are going to kill Kieran in a couple of turns if they are still here. So it is not always correct to go and get the Ancestral. And when it's not correct to get Ancestral, it's usually correct to set up a Terminus Miracle.
Yeah, that just means you're under too much pressure.
Yeah, and it is an interesting payoff point between what Wrath people play and don't play. Terminus is
And then on your
an auto include, I'd say, in any deck with Mystical Tutor, but it's a pretty easy include in most blue-white, based control decks. But Wrath of the Skies is a really common one in our meta because it's so good against Academy, because it gets all the artifact lands and stuff like that. But there's also, balanced payoffs between literally balance. If I'm paying this as a one-sided board wipe, which it quite often is because you might not run creatures, but then I'm discarding half my hand. Oh, for God's sake, start this again. I'm discarding a bunch of the creatures and sacking my lands, and balance feels bad. So that's the interesting tension between Wraths, which I find quite interesting, but not everyone does when all the creatures are dying to just be replaced by their Power Oculus.
And the two that you just mentioned are searchable off a Spellseeker as well.
Yes. Yep. Spellseeker is a really powerful one. Obviously, it helped out some combo decks when it went down to 0 points, but just normal spells decks are just really happy to have a Spellseeker, especially if you've got white, which you do if you're getting Terminus and Wrath of the Skies, getting the value off of the Ephemerate, and just the extra increased creatures that a lot of these control decks are playing in 2025 just means you can just keep getting a bit more value. It's a really powerful card. It's a cool one to see down to 0.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with it being down to 0. It seems very, very strong.
Just 2 weeks with a Time Walk deck, and you're like,
yeah, this thing's bonkers.
It does do some fun challenges to deck building. My Esper control deck, I don't run it anymore, but I ran Dam for a while because it was a Wrath again that Spellseeker could tutor. So it's just some cool little includes. Metabargoyfs is a relevant thing to have, or not have anymore because there's a Snap Custom Age. So never mind.
Wow.
I'll stop talking. This is a.
I mean, it has felt like Kieran's not had to do too much sculpting to make this work, as well. So I can kind of see that Ember might feel a bit like as if you've just got the answer all the time. I've just double griefed you on one, and you've still got every answer under the sun.
Although, on the counterpoint, when I played Ember in this tournament, she did follow up a Pyrogoyf with a Baragoyf that then killed me 2 turns earlier. So just kind of drawn off the top. So it does go both ways. Although I was pretty dead in that game anyway, so it's fine. But yeah, pretty thorough showing from Jeskai Control here. From
it was. We don't show many of these on the channel where it's that one-sided. But it's kind of good to see how nutty these draws can be for a Jeskai Control list.
Especially theoretically, aggro is not supposed to be a great match for control, traditionally. So seeing that it still can do that with the right draw.
Pretty good. All right, well played. And better luck next time, Ember. Thanks for joining us all. Catch you next time.